Hello, all, and welcome to this special edition on-demand webcast focusing on in-flight connectivity trends. My name is Woodrow Bellamy III. I'm the editor-in-chief of Avionics International. Before I introduce our guest for the webcast, I just want to give a brief introduction to what we'll be discussing today. So in this webcast, we'll be focusing on three topical or trending areas of in-flight connectivity for commercial airlines, and that includes the following. In the first topical area, we'll be focusing on what's happening right now with in-flight connectivity. What are airlines investing in? What are they adopting? How are they using connectivity? In the second topical area, we'll look at the next 3 to 5 years or so, and what we expect to evolve and what changes we expect to see in this marketplace. In the third topical area, we'll look at the long-term view and what changes we expect to happen within the next 10 years or so, well into the future. What drastic changes could be available in terms of in-flight connectivity that aren't happening today. So now with that out of the way, I'll get to our guest. So we have Daniel Welch, who is a senior consultant with Valour Consultancy. They're a UK-based provider of market intelligence services that includes insights and research about in-flight connectivity. Daniel's been a guest on my podcast a few times and always really has a good way of summarizing what in-flight connectivity, what's happening in the in-flight connectivity market right now. On the webcast today, we also have Bhavini Desai. She is the head of the Aero Market Division of ST Engineering iDirect. She's also a speaker at our Connected Aviation Intelligence Summit earlier this year. Now, Bhavini, before we get into our three topical areas of discussion, I think, a lot of people in the aviation industry know iDirect, especially for the modems that you provide, but you do a lot more than that. In terms of in-flight connectivity itself, can you kind of define what iDirect's role is in the market today?
Sure, thanks for that introduction, Woodrow. Well, obviously, modems are required for in-flight connectivity and connections, but ST Engineering also makes gateways, which are sophisticated ground stations that communicate with satellites in orbit, connecting them to the terrestrial network. And as our market is evolving with the exponential growth in LEO coming in the next few years, and along with the introduction of software-defined satellites, we need the entire ground segment to be virtualized. So as a leader in satellite ground segments, we see it as our role to enable that realization of this new era in connectivity, creating new ground, which allows gateways to be part of a software-defined network that allows capabilities to be applied dynamically and as needed. This will become more essential to address the varying aircraft demand, virtual networks that can be easily created to provide additional resources, and then or to take them back when they're no longer needed. So that is a part of our evolution in the market.
Thanks, Bhavini. So now let's get into our first topic of discussion, and I'll pass it on to Dan. Again, to the audience, Dan, following up on our podcast conversation earlier this year, there's certainly been plenty of news from in-flight connectivity service providers and equipment makers. I think, top of mind for me is definitely JSX, the launch customer of Starlink in-flight connectivity, is a few weeks away from launching their first Starlink connected flights. You've also had some other really good announcements, especially coming out of aircraft interiors earlier this year. But Dan, let's start. What's happening in the in-flight connectivity market right now today? What are some of the trends you're looking at right now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, and I know there's a couple of big events that are going on this week and into the coming weeks, which could also bring about some major headlines. So I'm conscious of that as well. But I think if I was to summarize where we see the big opportunities today, I think we're still underway in that recovery from COVID-19, and I think our Q2 2022 tracker data showed that line fitments remain consistently down by approximately half of what we saw pre-COVID levels. And those new pure wins, those airlines that haven't yet adopted connectivity, and vendors winning those airlines over, they're still really, really hard to come by. There's definitely plenty of positivity around with the number of airlines that are currently in RFPs or going through the RFI process, and we're hearing that from vendors and airlines around the industry. But I think when you look at where the key areas of opportunity are, I think those definitely lie in the upgrade and refresh of that current installed base of connected aircraft. Those first generation airlines that installed Wi-Fi over 10 years ago now are looking to upgrade services and have been doing for a couple of years. And nowhere is this more prominent than in the US, where we see a number of airlines looking to upgrade or refresh their connectivity services. And if you look at that installed base in the US, there's actually still 1,500 aircraft that operate with an air-to-ground connection in that fleet, and 1,300 of those aircraft are regional jets. So really, there's still a large amount of opportunity in that market, and that's where I think where we see the main area of opportunity as those aircraft move to SATCOM-based systems. And when I talk about regional jets, I think the majority of the industry would look at those regional jets historically and say they weren't ripe for SATCOM systems. But what we've seen with the arrival of the likes of Starlink, but also with the evolvement of next generation systems, we're seeing those regional jets now become a genuinely addressable opportunity for vendors. So I think that's predominantly where we see the opportunity.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. If you get on a regional aircraft right now, it's kind of up in the air whether you have access to good quality in-flight internet. But Vini, from an iDirect perspective, what are you doing as a company right now to improve in-flight connectivity from a technology perspective?
Yeah, so just to kind of connect with what Daniel was saying, is that because there's the evolution and they're looking to change out their infrastructure to kind of improve upon what it was a few years back. So we've been continuously working to improve our modems to meet these changing and evolving requirements of the market. And our customers and equipment vendors and integrators are asking for more advanced features and flexibility. So we have our newest modem, the IQ800, which provides feature parity with its predecessor, which was the CX780. But that also provides more enhancements to what we had previously, like 3x performance improvement, shorter beam switch by 25 to 50%. And then obviously with future software releases, we can provide even greater enrichment to this modem. And then the other key components for this modem is that it is journey enabled for our next gen platform. So it makes it further future proof. And we've also tried to maintain the form factor to as similar as possible as the older modem to make it easier for our integrators to adopt the newer modem for their installed base. So now these our integrators are gearing up to satisfy this next generation of connectivity and going through the trials and certifications now. So that requires our integrators like Satcom Direct for their certification needs to get IQ800 in their modem manager to ensure that these improvements can be delivered to their customer sooner. And one of our existing integrators, Comtron, has IQ800 certifications already completed. So they're able to address their customers and the markets, whether it's regionally or globally.
And
go ahead,
Woodrow, sorry, one of the things I was going to say, Bhavini mentioned a couple of points there around future proofing. One of the things I was going to note was we're definitely looking at those first generation airlines going beyond just offering Wi-Fi. I mean, it's long been the case, but we're looking now at systems. Airlines are looking at systems that allow them to, to offer streaming, not just to some passengers, but to many of their high-value guests, if not to all of them. I think being future-proof for the arrival of these multi-orbit networks that we're seeing as well is quite a crucial thing. So the couple of points that Bhavini mentioned there about future-proofing systems is really relevant.
Yeah, certainly a really good discussion. A lot happening in the market right now from a technology development perspective. So now let's shift to our second topic, which is we're looking a little bit in the near term, the next 3 to 5 years or so. And I want to start with Dan again for the second topic of the discussion. What are some of the big picture changes coming into the in-flight connectivity space within the next 3 to 5 years or so, following up on what you discussed in, topic number one, what's happening right now?
Yeah, and I mean, it's quite hard to summarize a lot of these trends into a conversation like we are today. But I think one of the things that we get asked about a lot is when airlines will be able to switch service providers without having to go through the pain and rigor of having to rip out incumbent technology. And I guess so what we're talking about here is that move towards interoperability. And I think that idea of being able to switch vendors without having to rip out hardware is perhaps best summarized as a silver bullet, because I mean it removes so much of the cost and so many of these barriers that we see presented today. But it is something that, from my point of view, is still many years away. It sits outside that 5-year window. But when you look within that 5 years, and even what's happening now, that will play out over the next 5 years, we're definitely seeing some really positive, like incremental steps. So if you take the IFC stack, for example, if you look at the hardware that makes up the IFE system, we've really been in a state of leveraging proprietary technology. And for many years, that's been a challenge, but this is changing. So I'll start at the top with, in the antennas realm, ThinCom's antenna, for example, is one of these options that most of the major IFC service providers will now or soon offer. And the firm has highlighted its solution can be made interchangeable from KU to KA by switching out the transmit and receive disks. And I think beyond this, so that's a very positive step. I mean, there's still steps involved in that process and a cost to that, but I think it's an incremental step in the right direction. And beyond this, we're then seeing in the antennas realm the arrival of these early ESA, electronically steered antenna concepts that work across different orbits. So an airline or an aircraft is able to benefit from the satellite that is best suited to the aircraft's needs, depending upon where it is geographically. And if it's over a hotspot like an airport, then that quality of service is still enhanced. And so you haven't got that necessarily that proprietary network issue linked to that. If we work down on the server side, we're seeing the rollout of solutions with middleware that will allow airlines to deploy third-party apps, and not only deploy them, but then maintain those apps even when switching service providers. And on the modem side, we're seeing the now rollout of these dual modem modmans that will allow an aircraft to operate across multiple networks. And so I think that, again, is something that we know of today, but will be rolled out over the next 5 years.
Yeah, some interesting points made there, Dan. Definitely was a big topic when in-flight internet really first started becoming available in that kind of first generation space that you talked about. Not being able to rapidly upgrade or change when something newer and faster becomes available, I know was an issue for a lot of airlines that were early adopters. So switching over to Bhavini, can you share some perspective on what you see changing from an iDirect perspective over the next 3 to 5 years? You talked about some of the collaborative work you're doing right now. How will that evolve over the next 3 to 5 years or so?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think as Dan mentioned, some of the efforts being done, like with the dual modem modman, and just in case the listeners don't know what the modman is, it's the abbreviation of the modem manager. And it is one key way to get that greater interoperability to the market, as the vendors, as our providers are looking for some more seamlessness that way. So dual mod man can accommodate more than one modem, making it flexible. And we're working with many integrators that are certifying their dual mod mans, which includes our IQ800. And Contran has already received certification for their dual mod man with the IQ800. And so we're working in those initiatives with our integrators. And then additionally, we're working, we're part of the Seamless Air Alliance. And as members, we're trying to determine how to accelerate the introduction of these new technologies on board planes to create an improved passenger experience for connectivity. So this is a piece that it seems that most people prefer to, it's the evolution of having the Wi-Fi be more like home-like or office-like user experience on board. There are numerous working groups representing suppliers like ourselves, service providers, network operators, mobile carriers, and importantly, quite a few airlines. So no airline alone can achieve the challenges it is to providing a smooth experience for their passengers. But the passengers want to walk on and feel like they're at a Starbucks and connecting seamlessly. So, and in addition, like personally, I've been involved in the architecture group, which is where Boeing and Airbus are working together to find some semblance of common ground necessary for the OEMs to build and or retrofit what airlines need. So some of these initiatives are helping to set the way for the next few years on how to get that change in technology on board and have a little more greater flexibility.
Right. Flexibility and standardization, two major topics for this market within the next 3 to 5 years or so. So now let's shift to our third and final topic of the discussion, focusing on sort of the long-term view, the future of the in-flight connectivity market over the next 10 years or so. What will be different? What type of in-flight internet services or applications could be available that aren't available today, right now? What type of collaborative work will be occurring between service providers and equipment makers and airlines? Let's start with Dan. Looking 10 years ahead, what type of changes do you expect to see in this market, and how will it evolve?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think there are two. I think the answer comes into two buckets that really stand out to me. Definitely a move toward digital is the first, and digital being the key word there. And then another trend that I think will play out in the longer term is the convergence of IFE and IFC. And this is something that's already in play, but the reality and the true disruption is something that I expect to see towards the end of that 10-year window. So if I go back to that first point around digital, it touches so many different areas of this space. The end game, as far as the antennas market is concerned, is the arrival of digital, multi-beam, multi-orbit, multi-band electronically steered antennas. There's a lot of multis in there, but really this drives that optionality, and this is truly that silver bullet really that we talked about earlier. In regards to interoperability, it gives airlines choice and optionality through a single terminal, and I think it's that digital element that will really drive that. And there's a couple of companies that are working on these solutions already, and there will be more vendors that look to start working on that digital hardware, that digital technology as we go through the forecast window, and these first generation electronically steered antennas filter into the market. So I think that's an interesting point. We've also talked extensively as a business and with you as well, Woodrow, about the current trend towards adoption of digital apps and services which fit around that connectivity pipe. In 10 years' time, I'd like to think that we're going to see airlines going beyond the low-hanging fruit and deploying apps that require that deep integration with internal systems and that truly enable that digital journey for passengers, interlinking the booking process with the in-flight experience and then the post-flight experience, so that there's no point during that journey where passengers are not able to be reached by the airline. So then I think that summarized that digital piece, or some of the main points. And then the second point around the convergence of IFE and IFC. I mean, we all know that IFC is looking like it will completely disrupt the traditional content model. I think we refer to it as a bring your own license model, but effectively connectivity allows passengers to stream their own content, and they can do that anyway offline, but certainly adding that online element gives passengers the ability to access their own platforms and all of that content instead of things they've downloaded. And I think what we're now seeing is IFE vendors shifting away from looking at IFE only and moving into these digital services. And I've mentioned a few in the past, like Blue Box and Airfire as an example, but more will do the same. And I think by the time that we get 10 years down the line, I expect that traditional content model will have been completely disrupted, and we'll have seen that merging of IFE and IFC, with the E shifting from entertainment to something more in the region of engagement.
Yeah, certainly a lot of important factors to watch, and could be some exciting things coming in the next 10 years. Bhavini, do you share Daniel's perspective on how this market will evolve over the next 10 years or so?
Yes, no, definitely, because at ST Engineering, iDirect, we've been moving to create new solutions for our customers on both fronts, as Dan mentioned. One of the ones we're doing actually in the more near term is we're beginning to market some of these offerings for where you can provide and improve the IFE, utilizing IFC for the delivery with our product called SkyFlow, which allows for the delivery of OTT content anywhere and to any device, to help with the IFC component there. And additionally, we're as our technology, all the technologies are evolving, it is valuable for our customers to use our solutions as a service offering to enable easier bridging to our next generation of platforms, and our expertise to manage those customers' needs in their network. So new entrants to the market can quickly get their services live while we manage their networks per their needs. And so then we're focusing also then for the future term, as you mentioned, Woodrow, on innovating towards the dynamic software-based ecosystem. The long-term view, what we've coined new ground, which I mentioned at the beginning, is the ground system environment becoming dynamic and in its interaction with the multi-orbit networks, cloud-based management systems, and leveraging our 5G standards. And then in terms of modems, as the solutions require some greater flexibility, we're looking at software-defined modems. And so we recently demonstrated a software-defined simulation, and we have some plans to possibly refine that for the Aero in the future. So it's just creating some of these solutions in the near term to help evolve for the requirements that will be there in the future.
Right. Yeah. Really interesting topic. You close out there on software-defined modem. A lot of things to look forward to. Well, those are our three trending areas. Really exciting discussion and some great points made by Dan and Bhavini today. Thanks to all of our viewers. Hopefully you got some insights on where this market is going, what's happening now over the next 3 to 5 years and 10 years into the future. Thanks, Dan and Bhavini, for joining me for the discussion.
No problem.
Thank you, Woodrow. Thank you, Daniel.